Hello guys and gals, me Mac here, and we got a doozy to go through today. So Mutahar from SomeOrdinaryGamers has been called out for being a fake engineer and lying about his supposedly totally real day jobs for the past 14 years or so. This drama really kicked off due to a video made by another YouTuber called Nikandros, who went through and found all the conflicting Mutahar statements about his education, experience, and work. If you want to see all the specific callouts, I'll have his video linked in the description and in the pinned comment. What we're going to do in this video is go over some more of the engineer details and technical claims made by Mutahar a bit more in depth. Let's kick things off with what kind of engineer Mutahar is.
I'm a computer engineer. I'm a computer engineer. Dude, I'm a computer engineer.
I'm a YouTuber. Why are you asking me?
Code.
And I'm just like a computer engineer by default.
Like I'm a computer engineer. I'm a computer engineer. You want to talk about cyber warfare? I'm a computer engineer by trade. I'm a computer engineer. I'm a computer engineer. I'm a computer engineer. No, I'm a computer engineer, okay? I'm a computer engineer. I'm a computer engineer. I'm a video engineer now. Speaking out of an engineer, like if I wasn't a computer science engineer, I wouldn't speak about Elon being an idiot. But as an engineer, yeah, I'm going to call him an idiot because he does do idiotic statements. This is why as a cybersecurity engineer, as somebody who is a computer, engineer, somebody who understands computer code, for instance, hearing Elon talk about computers and anything code related is actually mind-bogglingly stupid. But I'm an engineer. I know how this stuff is going, so I'm not even speaking out of pocket right here, okay? If you want to disagree with me, feel free, but you're actually wrong.
Alright, so he's a computer engineer, a cybersecurity engineer, a computer science engineer, and a video engineer, at least according to himself. Let's take a quick look at his university education to see if that gives us a better clue which kind of engineer he originally studied to be.
Like, it's a really good explanation of why, I picked engineering as, the road to go down when I was studying. I went to university for computer sciences, and that's it. I thought when I got into university for a while, and I dropped out a semester in, because I was like, okay, no. I'm a dropout myself. I've never finished university, but I'm not going to dog on, school. You know what I mean? If you're going to learn to be
valuable.
Yeah, if you're going to be an engineer, if you're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, if you're going to be in the STEM field, you need to go to university, okay?
Okay, there's a lot of stuff to unpack and explain here already. First, Mutahar only partially did one semester in a computer science program before dropping out. Though before I dig into that fully, let's double check his LinkedIn to see what kind of other experience or education he has. If we look at Mutah's LinkedIn, he has a diploma from Humber College for cinematography and film/video production, plus his only work experience listed for around that time period is web content producer. So I think it's pretty clear based on Mutahar's own statements and recorded job history in the 2012 to 2015 time period, he never studied or did any engineering or software work or IT security stuff for any serious amount of time. Prior to 2012, he supposedly had 2 or 3 different IT jobs.
I told you guys, I'm a guy who used to code bank applications. So back in Canada, I was basically finishing up my, high school diploma and everything. And at the time, I worked a little computer programming job. I worked as a pen tester, you know what I mean? I got into the whole thing early. I had a couple connections.
Somehow, while he was around 17, he managed to get a job being a pen tester, and during that exact same time period, he was also working as a programmer helping to create banking software. The pen tester claim might be plausible, but I have to ask, who was hiring some random kid with 0 experience to create bank software? That just sounds ridiculous, but let's put those teenage claims aside. Now, let me nitpick a bit the terms Mutahar has been using. He claimed to have done 1 semester of computer science, yet he called himself a computer engineer. These two things aren't exactly the same. Here in Canada, we have 4 major programs within the IT space: computer science, computer engineering, computer security, and software engineering. Now, before I fully explain the difference, do keep in mind there is a lot of overlap between all 4 of these programs, and graduates can and do jump between jobs you'd associate with a specific path often. For example, even though software engineering would produce software engineers like the name implies, computer science graduates tend to follow a lot of the same career paths and often do become software engineers as well. The same is true for computer engineering graduates as well. Anyways, let's start breaking these things down. Computer science is a program branch of mathematics focused on the field of computation. This is the oldest program type in IT, and this is still an incredibly common choice for people who want to go into software jobs in the future, though it has a much greater focus on the theoretical foundations of computing than any of the other programs. Software engineering is a newer program that, as the name implies, that focuses on the practical application of how to build software itself. So in these programs, there is a much greater focus on software development lifecycles, user interfaces, software testing, and maintenance of software systems, along with some comp-sci overlap on topics such as design patterns, algorithms, data structures, and other things directly tied to creating software itself. Comp-sci and software engineering probably have the most overlap in jobs, mainly since programmers and developer jobs are some of the most common and plentiful choices, along with some of the best salaries, so both program graduates tend to go down similar career paths. Now there's computer security. This is a fairly new program program that is offered. As the name implies, this focuses on system security. These programs have a greater focus on computer networks, Internet of Devices, and how to securely set up systems, as well as how to do pen testing and other things you associate more closely with the hacking areas of IT and computers. Lastly, we have computer engineering. This program is a combination of some comp sci and electrical engineering. Within a computer engineering program, you learn how to make circuit boards, design the actual hardware that makes up a computer, embedded systems, and how to create software for the hardware you design directly. There's a focus on lower level program than what a normal software engineer is using. The computer engineer will make the hardware function and have some basic ability, while the software engineer will be making programs on top or using the functionality of the hardware directly or indirectly. Now, what does this have to do with Mutahar? Well, if we remember, he said he attempted to do one semester in a computer science program, but he dropped out. Yet he calls himself a computer engineer, which I find odd, since based on what I just explained and the clips compiled by Nikandros, Mutahar's attempts at study and previous possible work experience, he was always either a programmer or a pen tester. It seems odd to me that instead of calling himself a more appropriate title, like pen tester, programmer, developer, or software engineer, even if that last one would be a line stretch too, he decided to use computer engineer, a job title that implies electrical engineering experience, which clearly he has zero of. It does seem like Mutahar carefully chose that title, since it's the only field that involves what most people would consider real traditional engineering in it, namely electrical engineering. Now let's move on to our next problem area of debate, using the title engineer in Ontario, Canada. Unlike a lot of countries, the title engineer is protected in Canada, and you're required to get a professional engineer license or a certificate of authorization if you want to call yourself an engineer or provide any kind of engineering services or work. Let me also bring up a response from VX Underground partially defending Mutahar while I'm explaining this section. If we look at VX Underground's tweet, we can find this section here where they state that within IT, it's extremely common for people to get the title engineer without being a traditional engineer. And you know what I have to say to that? I agree, actually. Not only do I agree, but this is incredibly common here within Ontario too. In fact, most software engineers here in Ontario never get a professional engineering license since it's almost never actually required for the job. The PO is against the title software engineer being used by non-holding engineers, but it's not really a huge deal here, and there isn't a whole lot of enforcement. Also, this isn't the same across Canada. In Quebec, for example, this matter is taken a lot more seriously, and that's why they title nearly all their jobs developer or programmer to avoid the engineer title and license hassle. While in places like Alberta, it has been ruled in a case before that a software engineer isn't an engineer in the traditional sense, so it's fine to use the title without breaching the PO rules. Here in Ontario, it's sitting in a gray area. While the PO is against the usage, most places, especially startups, don't really care and throw around the software engineer title without issue. Some companies like airlines, I heard, are stricter here in Ontario and do expect you to get your professional engineering license, but that's the uncommon case. Basically, since software engineering isn't a public impacting traditional branch of engineering, it's not really regulated or cared about by most in the same way as civil or structural engineering. Plus, a lot of companies and startups are starting to fight to be able to use the term software engineer without the legal hassles associated with it. Now, that little discussion aside about software and IT, while I agree it's not a huge deal itself, and many people do get into IT fields without needing an engineer license or degree, Mutahar doesn't call himself a software engineer normally. He calls himself a computer engineer. Now, while there might be an unspoken past for software, I'm not sure the same holds true for computer engineers. Since again, computer engineers do have an expectation to deal with electrical engineering, something that is considered a traditional branch of engineering and does require a professional engineering license. His title choice is a lot harder to defend here in Ontario. One YouTuber by the name of Harmful Opinion seems to have reported Mutahar to the PO, since he wanted an answer to this question and didn't want to speculate. Since Mutahar never seems to have offered any actual engineering services, I doubt he's going to face any serious consequences, legally speaking, with the most probable outcome being a fine he'll have to pay at worst, and possibly have to give another more explicit and direct public apology. So while I agree the protectionism of the title engineer for IT is a bit silly, Mutahar probably did fly a bit too close to the sun with his specific usage here in Canada. Not to mention his complete lack of work experience and education really doesn't help his case, even for those that are arguing the self-taught angle. Also, while we're on the topic of computer engineer, let me debunk something quickly. There was a super viral tweet going around from Kaguya's Top Gal that got like 2 million views, where they said Mutahar pretended to be a computer engineer to get a visa so he could come to Canada, with a picture of one of Gamma's videos. Okay, first of all, Gamma in his video of Mutahar lied, people cried, never said anything like this. Also, Mutahar was living in North America way before he was 18, and was even attending high school within the greater Toronto area. Here's a picture I managed to find of a teenage Mutahar attending a high school in what I believe to be the city of Mississauga specifically. So this claim is completely bogus and something Kaguya just made up for engagement bait. There was zero truth to this, and Gamma is innocent and had nothing to do with the claim. Okay, now let's go back to the VX Underground tweet. The next part we'll look into is the paragraph where Mutahar ordered the entire VX Underground malware collection on a drive and explored it. I was pretty curious to see what Mutahar would do with the virus collection, so I went and found the video in question. It's Mutahar's "I got hacked by North Korea" in this video. I'll leave a link below for anyone that wants to view it themselves. Naturally, I went and watched the video, but honestly there's nothing for me to really say. Like, if we look at the VX Underground tweet, they say Mutahar was playing with the payloads, but I feel like that's a bit of a stretch. Basically in the video, Mutahar gets the drive from VX Underground that he ordered, he attaches it and explains what's inside it, what folders are there, and what's inside, namely viruses, papers, and other malware related tooling. Then he on another laptop goes and just runs a bunch of random viruses directly on his system until it gets completely wrecked. During the entire video, he never really dives into anything or explains anything technical. He basically gives the most surface level commentary on what he's seeing at any given moment while messing around with the drive. I'm not hating on Mutahar for the video or VX Underground. I can totally see why this might be entertaining for the average viewer, but there really isn't anything in this video to show Mutahar has any kind of domain knowledge or experience. I'll agree with VX Underground's sentence near the end, where it really does seem like a very slightly less noob, showing noobs random tech stuff. Now, let's go back to Nikandros' vid and see what else he managed to find about Mutahar's IT projects and work.
Do you do programming? I don't know why that took me 3 different ways to ask that.
I do it it's more of a hobbyist thing now for me personally. I'm trying to like work around with consoles at this point, like reverse engineer shit that I have.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So that's what I'm into now. It's just like it all has become like a hobbyist thing for me at this point. Like,
okay, reverse engineering console is crazy advanced stuff. This isn't something an amateur can really do or easily learn on their own. If Mutahar was talking about real non-documented systems reverse engineering, that might involve some basic soldering work, assembly debugging, dumping ROMs, analyzing data while the system is running, all pretty tough and time-consuming things to do. Here's a great video by Poking Technology showing how he went about reverse engineering a 6502 based game console. This is a very simple system even compared to older game consoles like the Super Nintendo or Genesis, and it still takes an incredible amount of knowledge, work, and trial and error to make any kind of progress. Now, if Mutahar is doing reverse engineering or emulation type of work on existing popular consoles, that's slightly less bad, since you can avoid a lot of the real-world hardware messing around stuff or dumping ROM needs, since those systems and parts are well documented and understood with info easily available online. Though again, trying to write an emulator is once again pretty advanced stuff and not something an amateur is going to be able to do or easily learn on their own. You're going to need to understand lots of highly technical things, like how the system's CPU works, what kind of chips the system has, and other quirks or special hardware that might be included, and how it interacts with the other parts of the system itself. Anyways, let's see what other tech stuff Mutahar works on.
No, right now as a video editor, I do more engineering now, so back-end programming for effects work. I'm working on a new codec for video right now for H.265, so we can actually transmit better video quality at higher resolutions. I'm actually doing something which...
Okay, timeout. Before I even start explaining this, I'm calling 100% BS and lies on this claim. Mutahar is not working on a video codec or contributing to H.265. High efficiency video coding, also known as H.265, is a video codec standard itself. It does not make any sense that he's making a new codec to work on an existing codec/standard. Next, codecs are incredibly complex standards and pieces of software, and a result of sometimes close to decades worth of work with some of the world's largest companies and greatest minds working together. Even the people doing small bits here and there are fairly good and competent programmers, not amateur hobbyists. Next, let's actually look at the diagram for HVAC Nikandros put up in his video. If this looks complex, that's because this is fairly complex. Let's look at the left-hand side at the very top. This coding tree units is actually step 2 technically speaking. Before this step, there's another preparation step where the input video is collected and some pre-processing is done. The goal of this step is to prepare the frames for the compression process. This can include stuff like color space conversion, downsampling chroma channels, and frame reordering for better temporal prediction. Temporal redundancy is a fancy term that means you're basically taking 2 frames and trying to figure out the difference between them and only storing the difference instead of the entirety of the next frame. At this stage, the encoder knows what a frame looks like, but hasn't yet tried to compress it down yet. Now we're on to step 2 of the process, partitioning the frame into coding tree units, or CTUs for short. This is the start of the diagram flow we can actually see. The goal of this step is to break a frame down into more manageable blocks of pixels for analysis. H.265 supports up to 64 by 64 CTUs, and they can further be divided into coding units with a quad tree structure. Then the coding units are further divided into prediction units, PU for short, and transform units, or TUs for short. Or in more plain English, we're taking a video frame and splitting it down into smaller block-shaped pieces, then we can once again break down those blocks into even smaller blocks. This third level block split are the pieces of data that will actually be processed in later steps. Now we move on to step 3, the prediction and estimates. H.265 doesn't store every single frame from a raw video. Instead, it tries to predict future frame data from existing frame data. It does this through 2 types of predictions, inter-prediction and intra-prediction. Intra just means the prediction is done without reference to the other frames. Only the data within the frame itself is used for it, while inter means other frame data is used to help make the prediction and adjustments. Interprediction is stuff like the motion estimations and compensation, where the encoder finds matching content in other frames and uses motion vectors plus motion compensation to create the predicted block instead of resetting all the pixels within a frame block. For a clearer example, let's pull up the separate diagram. Here we can see there's a race car and it's moving from the center of the frame to the bottom right. Since the race car is moving, instead of saving all of the frame data for it every frame, instead what can be done is store the original frame race car data, then use motion vectors to simply move that block data across the screen that matches up with the future frame position. Intra-prediction is for areas where interprediction doesn't help. Here the encoder predicts a block from neighboring pixels in the same frame. Basically, instead of saving every single block of data, the encoder will try to predict what surrounding blocks of pixels will look like with specific modes and patterns. Now we're onto the fourth step with the transformation, scaling, and quantization. In this step, it's where the predictions made and the actual block data of a frame are compared and turned into saved frequency data. There's a lot of integer approximations done here with discrete cosine and sine transformations. This transformation step makes it easier to concentrate the visual information into smaller numbers of coefficients. Then the quantization is done, and the goal of that is to throw away small, less visible details to save bits. The coefficients are divided by the quantization step size. Basically, what all that means in English, the difference between frames are found, and this is known as the residual. From there, the larger your quantization step is, the more compression is going to be done, and the more quality loss there will be compared to the original raw frame. Since human vision isn't perfect and has different quirks, we don't need every micro shade of a color saved in a block. For example, since the size and information is basically seen as the same larger block of color when we humans look at it from a far enough distance, the goal of this step size is to basically remove as much possible color noise and data without it visibly affecting how we see the image frame block itself. Then we move on to the next step, entropy coding, or here in the diagram, header forming and context adaptive binary arithmetic coding. The goal of this step is to take all the data and info from the previous steps and store it as compactly as possible so that the CABAC is encoding the prediction modes, the motion vectors, and the quantized coefficients into a bit stream. While the efficiency for storing this is fairly high, that also means this is pretty computationally intensive while trying to play back a video. Anyways, back to the diagram steps. Then we reach the loop filters, which is the deblocking and sample adaptive offset. Basically, this step is trying to smooth out and clear the final stored frame. Since the frames are processed in small blocks, there ends up being clear visual block shape artifacts and leftovers once the process reaches this point. The filter and deblocking step helps smooth out and blend these output blocks so it's not noticeable in the final output frame. Alright, now we're at the last step for the encoder, general control. The goal of this step is to package all of the encoded information for storage or transmission. This is where the headers are added with sequence information, timing info, and other things you expect the video file to have. Then the last spot of the diagram to note, we have the output video signal here in the bottom right. This is the decoder step. The decoder is basically doing most of what I just explained in reverse. To help make this entire process a bit easier to understand, let me give a quick analogy. Let's say you had a giant Lego city built, and you wanted others to be able to recreate and view it. So encoding is like the process of taking that entire Lego city and making an instruction manual with every single step and piece recorded. Then someone that has the pieces and manual can recreate the original Lego city near perfectly. Okay, with all of that talk aside, can we all take a moment and appreciate the absolutely insane amounts of effort, research, and sheer work that goes into making video possible? This is truly an absolutely incredible feat of human engineering that most of us probably never really think twice about. Now, back to Mutahar. Does anyone think he has any clue how H.265 technically works? Or that it could realistically work and create his own video codec? Or something on top of H.265 himself? Yeah, I thought not. Mutahar never seems to try and claim he's working on more normal tech projects or things. He doesn't talk about working on websites, picking up new programming languages, making random apps. He seems to have an odd tendency to always lie about the most impressive, cool, and challenging possible things that a developer could work on. I'm not going to speculate too much on why he chooses to lie so often. Other YouTubers I'm sure will do a lot more of that, but I will say from what I've seen, he always does seem to carefully craft his lies, targeting projects and topics that he seems to think would give him the maximum amount of respect and admiration possible. Anyways, let's go back to Nikandros' vid and see what else he found on Mutahar.
I want to sell to Microsoft at some point later on. So I've been designing AI toolset that basically you can inject, hopefully, into like video tools, and this is gonna be like video games or whatever, right? So it's like, let's say that Microsoft backwards compatibility, right? So I had this tool idea. This is kind of what I got going in my head. So I have this idea, and I hope to one day sell it to Microsoft, right? So what I do is, since I have a really good video background, right, I've been designing neural stuff around it. So what I want to do one day is, you know how Microsoft has backwards compatibility, right? So would it be really fun if I could design a way that Microsoft could take the textures in their video games, right? So they could take the textures mapped in their video games and find a way to AI upgrade them. So like basically use a fucking photo AI, like basically use an artificial intelligence that can scan across, you know, all these textures and just fucking upscale them to like 4K, 8K, whatever they want to go to, and make games look better without needing, developers to make it better, right? That could be an idea for me. It sounds simple on paper. Obviously, it's very, very, very fucking time consuming to make it even as effective as you want.
So that giant word salad aside, basically Mutahar wanted to create an AI image upscaler and one day sell it to Microsoft. Don't worry, I'm not going to start trying to badly explain how AI works or is made now, but let me just say there's already lots of image upscaler programs out there, and nearly all of the big tech companies have their own in-house solutions for image upscaling. I don't think Mutahar has the skills to build something like this, and I don't think this is something Microsoft would be interested in buying from him either, when they already have half a dozen solutions in-house already, not to mention they're partnered with OpenAI and have access to all the cutting edge research and work they've done. Plus, there's tons of open source upscalers out there already, more than a decade old, like Waifu2x. And don't let the name fool you, it's one of the absolute best image upscalers for non-photorealistic images, and a fair number of game studios and developers have used it to upscale some of their textures for remasters or patch updates. Alright, let's go back to Mutahar and see what else he talked about.
One of the code bases that we're looking at over here is this falling particle. Now, there's a lot of numbers that are being dropped in here, and one of the things that you'll tend to see in PirateSoftware's code is magic number abuse.
Okay, I have a slight problem with this. For anyone that has seen my part 2 DRM analysis and code review on PirateSoftware, you'll know magic numbers is something I myself criticize PirateSoftware on in a lot of places in his codebase. Now, for this very specific clip and file, I'm actually going to defend PirateSoftware. GameMaker is an IDE, which is just a fancy term to mean the program helps you with coding. Specifically, these functions shown here on screen are built into GameMaker itself, and if you go over the arguments, you can actually see what they're called and what they do. While an argument could be made variables should be used, this is an extremely weak example and place to talk about magic number abuse. I find it a bit strange that Mutahar talks about coding and having experience with all sorts of crazy, complex, and difficult things, yet he doesn't seem to be able to think a bit more critically on a small code snippet. It seems like either he doesn't really know much and can't offer any commentary above an average non-tech commentator, or he was too lazy to check any of the code himself and was 100% repeating comments and issues he's heard or read from Reddit or other YouTubers and just assuming they were true without verifying the claims himself. Anyways, with that techie stuff out of the way, let's go back to the VX Underground tweet and finish reading what else they wrote. Basically, in the next paragraph, VX is like, Muta probably isn't any kind of security guy or hacker or programmer, but he has some basic knowledge. I agree with this partially. I watched a few of Mutahar's videos, and his explanations are mostly fine. They're very surface level to the point a non-tech person could probably explain it as well as he did if they just skimmed through Wikipedia or an article, but there's nothing egregiously wrong in the few I watched either. I don't think Mutahar knows a lot more than the average person from the way he presents info. It seems as though he just finds Reddit posts, articles, or other YouTube videos where someone who knows a thing or two explains it, then he spits back the info in a more noob-friendly way. If you watched Mutahar's tech vids, you probably didn't learn anything too bad or damaging, but if you're going to keep watching him, you should be taking a much greater grain of salt whenever he decides to talk about tech topics. The next paragraph from VX is basically them suggesting Mutahar was exaggerating, but could have some kind of tech job before. This I can't agree with. For anyone who hasn't watched Nikandros' video yet, it's clear to see Mutahar's only plausible tech job experience was when he was around 17 or so in 2010 to 2011. After that point, he never worked in tech again. In 2013, he basically went all in on his YouTube channel and film diploma. After graduating, he doubled down on YouTube and was working as a video editor. From a Facebook post Muta shared, he also states he was glad he could pursue his passion for film and not bother with programming careers anymore. Then if we fast forward to around 2019 to 2020, Mutahar states a million different jobs and things he does.
I'm a fucking editor in real life anyways, so ever since I became a video editor and that was my job in life, I work as a video editor. You know, that's my job.
By trade, what I do for a living is video editing.
Am I a fucking passionate video editor? Do I like my job? Yes, I do. My job is video editing. I'm a video editor by trade. No, I'm video editor. You know, that's a general second profession of mine is day trading, swing trading, whatever you want to call it. I do a lot of calculations in my head. I lose money, but I generally have an 80-85% success rate. And that's just the nature of this. I invest. That's my job now. I just sort of sit home and invest money. All right, as an engineer, if I show up to my office and I fuck up, okay, I don't have a job anymore. At our company, like not YouTube, but outside YouTube, like when it comes to our main work property and everything, like our like asset management, property development, stuff like that.
That's your main thing?
I literally just invest money. Like I buy property and I invest, and that's all I do now.
He's a full-time daily upload YouTuber. He has a podcast. He sometimes live streams. He's a day trader. He does real estate investments through his company. He's also a landlord and his tenants. He's a family man with a wife and kids, and he still has enough free time to game for hours per day. Plus, he runs a skincare product company with his podcast co-host. Then he also has has enough free time to randomly investigate other YouTubers. And finally, on top of all of that, he somehow was supposed to have enough free time in the day to have a full-time 9-to-5 office engineer tech job too somehow. I'm sorry, but no one with a brain can actually believe this. There simply aren't enough hours in a week to do all these things, and most of these things require work within the same time periods of the day. Let's check over the last parts of the VX Underground tweet and see what's left. Okay, for the paragraph about how tough being a YouTuber can be, and everyone makes mistakes, like, I can agree everyone makes mistakes, might misspeak, and things can be nitpicked, but his engineer claims aren't nitpicks. He's been repeatedly calling himself that for over a decade.
I'm an engineer.
I'm a fucking engineer. I'm a goddamn engineer. I'm an engineer.
I'm a fucking engineer. I'm an engineer.
I'm only an engineer. Oh, I'm an engineer.
I'm an engineer. I'm just an engineer. I'm an engineer. I'm just a fucking engineer. I'm a goddamn engineer. I'm a fucking engineer. I'm an engineer. I'm an engineer. As an engineer, being an engineer, I don't have to tell you as an engineer. I'm just a dumb engineer as an engineer. My engineer asked, but as an engineer, so I'm just a fucking dumb fucking engineer. Like I can told her, like I'm an engineer, but I'm an engineer. As an engineer, I'm an engineer. As somebody that is an engineer, as an engineer. I'm saying I'm the number one engineer as an engineer. As an engineer. All right, as an engineer, I'm just an engineer. Speaking as somebody that is an engineer, I'm an engineer. I'm an engineer.
This isn't a mistake he made 1 or 2 times. This is something he deliberately chose to talk about and used to help build himself up for more than a decade. Also, for the last paragraph from VX, I don't know if this is just a me thing, but why jump into a discussion without checking over a bit of the context and accusations first? Anyways, I see your cat pic and I raise you my Google search cat picture. Okay, with those things out of the way, what was Mutahar's response to this drama?
Start talking a little bit. I know there's been some drama, and I want to kind of address things here really quickly. So obviously, I have been calling myself a engineer, in some cases a programmer, a cybersecurity engineer, whatever you can call it. And, you know, I apparently have also been a dropout, which I don't hide. Now, obviously, me being a dropout, I don't have a degree, so I'm not a certified or licensed engineer. Now, if you feel offended, if you feel wronged that I called myself an engineer while not being a degree-holding engineer, then for that I do apologize. And I will denigrate myself to, you know, I guess programmer or a fat Indian guy that knows a bit about computers. That's what I'll leave it at. And that's pretty much all I have to say. Now again, if you want to stick around, awesome. If you still feel wronged and this does not suffice for you, then I don't really give a fuck. Simple as that.
So basically, after a week of radio silence from him, he uploaded a 30-minute video about censorship. Within it, he spent like 1 minute being like, yeah, I'm not an engineer. I'm sorry you feel that way, and I don't care what you think about that. This engineer drama wasn't the only call out he had, but he seems to have chosen to not talk about any of the other dramas. Also, you know, I'd even call him out on using the title programmer. Maybe I'm being a bit too nitpicky, but does Mutahar ever actually code anything on his own? Most of the time in his videos, I see him copying and pasting code or scripts. He always seems to be copying stuff from an existing article or how-to guide. Like, he doesn't have to be a great programmer or anything. I just like to see him actually show he can do some basic coding by himself. You'd expect from a junior programmer. But again, I'm probably being way too nitpicky with this point, and it probably doesn't matter too much. Anyways, from everything shown so far from Nikandros, it really doesn't seem like Mutahar does any kind of tech work. He's a tech enthusiast at best, and that seems to be the extent of things. If he has code somewhere or a GitHub or anything else, I'm willing to check over and give him a pass on the programmer title, but from the way things look currently, he still seems to be frauding and lying. He's basically using a few months of Nepo connection job experience from when he was a teenager as a justification to call himself a programmer or engineer today, more than 14 years later. Now, let's talk about the actual impact and fallout from Mutahar being a fake engineer. Mutahar's early YouTube success and fame came from him reading creepypastas and exploring random websites over Tor and just sharing weird things he saw. So it's not like his tech or engineering claims really matter during the early years of his channel, and these days he's basically the bargain bin moist critical, rambling about a random topic for 20 to 30 minutes per day. So does the fact he's a fake engineer matter? Not really, no. It's kind of sad and pathetic to lie and pretend in front of a teenage audience to feel cool, but there isn't a whole lot of damage done to anyone. Now, a lot of people are calling this a nothing burger drama. While I can agree the engineer stuff isn't a super massive issue, I find it incredibly odd that the collective internet, myself included, completely raked PirateSoftware over the coals, while a huge swath are giving Mutahar a complete pass for basically lying the exact same way. While I don't think this is a big enough drama yet to toss away Mutahar, I do think this should have gotten more pushback from his audience, especially when you consider this is exactly the kind of drama and think he himself would rip someone apart for over 2 to 3 videos. Yet because he's the one in the hot seat, all of a sudden it doesn't matter at all, and he doesn't care in the slightest. Also, this drama isn't ending here. Some other YouTubers have also started going through other dramas Mutahar was involved in with a much finer comb now. One YouTuber called Accounting and YouTube has basically done his own research into the completionist charity drama and has determined Mutahar was in over his head and made a lot of mistakes. Some YouTubers are looking into the Mama Max drama and claims now too, and Nikandros' video that started all of this was just a small teaser. Apparently later this month he's going to be releasing a massive video truly exposing Mutahar. I have no clue what's going to be in it, so we're all gonna have to wait and see what he draws before he can fully wrap up this drama one way or another. Anyways, that's all I got for you guys and gals for the time being. If you like what you saw, like, subscribe, and share the vid, and I am out.